talk about a phenomenon that affects 70%, and some studies say up to 85% of people. So that means, 8.5 out of 10 of your clients are experiencing this, and you're really coaching around it without even knowing it, because many people don't know they have it. They just know they feel an insecurity. So I hope today is really informative in terms of helping you address something that they maybe didn't even put a name to yet. Okay, so 3 things. It's important to know what imposter phenomenon really is, not what we think it is. And it's really important to know where it comes from. Because once you understand those two, big aha moment. And then I'm going to leave you with a tool that you can practice with yourself or even use with a client. And if we had 2.5 hours today, we could have worked with one of you to do that. And who knows, maybe we'll do that in the future. But today we're going to leave you with a tool. I'll send Jimmy or Misha the PDF, and you all will have that. Okay. Any questions before we begin? Everyone can hear me? All good? Okay, fine. Okay. So just to give credit where credit is due, 2 psychologists, Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes, coined the name imposter phenomenon. And we'll talk about what it is. It's a situation in whereby a high achieving person has trouble believing or internalizing their success. Whether they're an artist, they can't believe their paintings are great, or they're a coach and they worry that maybe they're not good enough. They're constantly afraid of, oh, will I be exposed? Because deep down, they are not sure they are good enough, despite praise and despite feedback. And some people with imposter syndrome believe that they're successful because of timing or luck, or I really studied hard, or that relationship got me in the door. They always will attribute it to something else when they get acknowledgement. They won't take full credit. And they have feelings of inadequacy, despite a resume or a bio that indicates otherwise. So your high achieving clients may in fact have imposter syndrome. So before we talk about, how it manifests and what it means and how to work with it, let's first examine ourselves. This will be totally anonymous. Jimmy has set it up that if you answer this question, no name will show. I'm happy to answer non-anonymously to get us started, but there are 7 questions I'd like you to listen to. And at the end, if you said yes to even one of them, that means that you can identify with the feeling of imposter syndrome. So I'll read the 7 questions. They'll be on the screen as well. And then we'll put up a poll to see if we match the 70% ratio. Okay. Do you ever secretly worry that others will find out that you're not as smart or capable as they think you are? Now remember, these questions address different degrees and types of imposter phenomenon. Do you sometimes shy away from challenges because of nagging self-doubt? Do you tend to chalk up your accomplishments to being, well, it was a fluke, or, well, no, it's not that such a big a deal, and people really like me, so, they asked me to do it? Do you hate making mistakes, being less than fully prepared, or not doing something perfectly? Do you tend to feel crushed, even by constructive criticism, seeing it as the evidence of your inadequacy? I think we have someone speaking. Okay. 6, do you believe that other people, colleagues, family, friends, whatever, are smarter and more capable than you are? Do you believe your fellow coach is more capable than you are? And lastly, do you live with fear of being found out? They'll really see how much I really know if I do this. Being discovered unmasked. So I will tell you, I identify with at least 5 of these. So if you identify with any of them, please just tell us yes or no. And let's see, the poll is up. So far, it's 100% yes. It's still 100% yes, and 26 people answered. I think we have 46 in the room, Jimmy. I don't know if you want to wait.
No, 46 registered. We've got 31 in the house.
Okay, so out of 31 of you, 27 answered the question, and 27 of you said yes. I'll end the poll, and Jimmy, I guess you can show it. I don't know if you're able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should be able to see, yeah, 28 out of 28.
Cool. So it's there. All right, would you mind taking that down, Jimmy? Let's see, shop stop sharing.
Paulette, can I share something
Sure.
about this specifically? The imposter syndrome, I don't have it. It's showing up for me 100% as I finish the book. Like with the book, with writing the book, all these signs showed up.
Wow. But yet you said you don't have it, or you do?
In general, no. In general, no. I have not come across the mirror with the imposter until I started writing the book.
Darn it. Well, now he's visiting. I'll help you invite him out the door, or her. Wow. And it makes sense, because that's what happens. When you're given, imposter syndrome will rear its ugly head when you get a promotion, a new project, having to write a book, having to create a curriculum, having to start with a new client that maybe gets you a little nervous. So that makes perfect sense, Lubna. All right, so here's what it looks like. And Lubna really segued beautifully into this. Your client will be a high achieving client, just like we all are here. They will sometimes doubt their intelligence. They will sometimes downplay their abilities and skills. They definitely have a problem taking in a compliment or an acknowledgement. You know, the person who says, oh, well, they don't say thank you. They say something after you acknowledge them. They can't really enjoy their accomplishments because they're wondering when they're going to get revealed next. So, you know, you do something, you write a book, it's used, Lubna, and then you're asked to write a book again. And you're like, oh God, I haven't even been able to take in the success of my first book, you know? And people who have imposter syndrome, you'll hear them comparing themselves to others. You'll hear them overestimating other people that they work with and underestimating themselves. In the session, that will come up a lot. If you even give them praise in the session, they may discount it saying, well, you know, but I haven't been able to do it for 10 years. Yeah, I finally figured it out. They tend to be the overworkers among your clients. They tend to be the perfectionists. And they probably cover their feelings of inadequacy. So it may be hard to find out if they have imposter syndrome. A lot of people are not vulnerable. That's why we create the safe space, so they can feel free to share these things with us. So here's what you look for if they haven't shared it. Oh. Now, so why do we even bother talking about this? Why is this a big deal? There's a huge cost with imposter phenomenon emotionally for somebody. Their emotional life is mitigated. They have trouble realizing their value. They can't feel good about their value or their contribution. They fear negotiating for a raise or a promotion. I have so many clients like that where I figured out that's imposter syndrome, because they don't really believe they're worth it. So they're afraid to get into the conversation and get a no, or someone says, we're not giving it to you for this reason. They're, for the very same reason, they're reluctant to vie for a promotion. They don't ask to get ahead. And they do avoid high visibility projects because they're afraid they'll get found out to a larger mass. And that just feels too scary. They can be reluctant to network because the more people you expose yourself to, the more chances they'll find out you're really not that good. and they can't really talk about their accomplishments. All my, not all my, I would say 80% of my clients that are female, senior females, cannot tell me when I ask, so what have you accomplished for the firm? What have you contributed? I either get silence or I don't know, or well, I did this and that. And then I work with them and we'll wind up with a list of 12 accomplishments with action verbs in each. And they're like, oh, wow, I'm so glad that we did this. They can't communicate their accomplishments because they have difficulty internalizing how good they are and what their strengths are. And they do procrastinate. And sometimes they procrastinate because the project seems a bit scary or overwhelming because there's something in that project that's new to them. And so they put it off for fear of doing it and doing it the wrong way, or revealing that they didn't know the X part of that project. Or they take a long time to respond to the proposal from the organization because they're not sure what to say when they ask about, well, who's on your coaching faculty, right? So they procrastinate because they don't feel comfortable revealing certain things. Can I stop here just for a second? Can anyone relate to any of these? I know I certainly do. I'm really just curious. Could you put in the chat if this is you or not you, or do you have clients like this?
Yeah, so put it in the chat or go ahead and put a thumbs up in the reactions.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, me too, me and my clients. I can't think of a client that doesn't have it. Yeah, okay, good. All right, good. Thank you, guys. I just wanted to make sure, we were all aligned and this was making sense and that you see this. Okay. So, it has an impact on leaders. It has a big impact on leadership. The boss, so the women I work with, the leaders who have imposter syndrome, they tend to be micromanagers. That's the feedback they get in their 360. They tend to overwork their people and overwork themselves. They have enormous difficulty if they make a mistake. It's very hard for them to forgive themselves and to move on from it. And it's very hard for them when someone who reports to them does it, to let it go and just help them develop. They don't feel very deserving. So as a result, if they get an accolade, they don't leverage the moment. Like someone comes to them and says, that was, really great coaching, Lubna. My organization really could use you. They don't leverage the moment and say, well, here's what I can do for your organization. I'm not saying that's Lubna because Lubna is pretty confident, just using an example. And they minimize what they bring to the table. They can't, if you ask them straight out, they'd be like, humana, or they give you one or two things when it's probably 10. And we need to talk about this for the reason, I mentioned before. 70% of people report experiencing it once and many regularly. But now there's another study, and I think there'll be more. Now there's a study by KPMG that says 75% of female executives, if that's who you work with, across industries, and 85% said commonly. So we're talking female executives. We went to a difference. Instead of saying just people, 70% of people, we went to female executives. So believe it or not, Sheryl Sandberg openly talks about her imposter syndrome, saying that days she wakes up, she feels like a fraud. She's not sure she should be where she is. And I won't read all of these to you, but you can take a Kate Winslet, Oscar winner, Meryl Streep, Einstein, Michelle Obama. These are people that for some of us in our mind are very capable people who have contributed a lot or are talented. And yet Meryl says, why would anyone want to see me again in a movie? And I don't know how to act anyway, so why am I doing this? It's pretty unbelievable. Michelle Obama, I love this one. I still have a little imposter syndrome. Doesn't go away, that feeling that you shouldn't take me that seriously. What do I know? I share that with you because we all, oh, my screen is blocking the word. We all don't something in our abilities about our
We all
power.
have doubts in our abilities, about our power, and what that power is.
Thank you. I have a crack in my screen. The LED is blurry. Thank you, Jimmy, in case
Absolutely.
it happens. Yeah.
Paulette, there was a question that's kind of relevant. So I noticed that we're using a couple of different words, phenomenon and syndrome. And Alex wanted to know is which one is it, and is there a difference between the two?
Yeah. Well, there isn't a difference, but the term was coined by those two psychologists as syndrome. As a phenomenon. And many people say syndrome, and that's okay. You can call it whatever you like. But a lot of people are opposed to the word syndrome because it refers to it almost sounds diagnostic, whereas phenomenon sounds like something that emerges that's curious to look at. A syndrome almost suggests that there's something wrong with you, because they'll use the word syndrome with certain mental illnesses or illnesses. So I like phenomenon, but I know that I've been so used to calling it both will come out of my mouth. So both are correct. And if you have a preference, use one or the other. Okay.
Paulette, you're on mute. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
How did that happen? Okay. It's really important to know where this came from, because when you feel this, you start to think, could it be true? Is it true about me? I want to tell you where this came from, and you had nothing to do with it. The first way it can occur is in a particular family, you were designated as the golden child. You were the smart one, the attractive one, the characteristic one, the smart, what's the word I'm looking for? Charismatic one, sorry. And in some way, you were revered. You were put above maybe other siblings, or if you didn't have siblings, you were the perfect child. And you partly believe it, but part of you wants to disprove it. Like, I don't know if that's really right. And when you go to school or when you go to work, you're given opportunities to prove people wrong about you. And your family is still unimpressed. So a relative is Do you hear that? Okay, went away. So, for example, this is my dynamic. My brother was considered the golden child. He was going to be a doctor or a president. I was female, and my parents were off the boat Italian, and they said, women don't go to college. We don't waste money on that. They're going to grow up to be housewives and have children. So dynamic one relates to how I grew up. My brother was the special one, and I was, let's just get her through life as far as we can. Dynamic two is that you are that golden child, and your family treats you accordingly. Hang on, I have to move this. They give you praise, tons of praise. They allow you to do things that maybe you even say to yourself, glad I got away with that. And then you go to work or school and you realize, they told me I was really perfect, but guess what? This algebra is hard. I'm not so great at math. Or, I went to the tennis team. Oh, I really suck at that. So now they're starting to see they're not these perfect beings that their family told them they were. And as a result, they start to doubt themselves. They say, wait a minute, so it's not true that I'm this really capable person who's really smart and really edgy. So in the first dynamic, you doubt yourself because it was implanted, it was embedded in you, and it's in your subconscious. In the second dynamic, the opposite was embedded. But no one's perfect. And then when you start seeing your imperfections, you think, oh, that was a lie. I'm really not so good at everything. There's one more, just a third one. Perhaps you were a gifted child. You went to a special school, or you just were really driven to succeed. You were 6 years old and doing, paintings, but your parents were neglectful of that. And you didn't get positive feedback, maybe as you should have. So you become an overworker due to the concern that everybody's going to see that you don't have anything. You're working for that praise. You're working for that approval. I'm just curious. Can we ask the group maybe by the chat box, dynamic 1, 2, or 3? They can just write the number. Well, would that be it? And if you don't feel comfortable, please don't. Please don't. If you feel uncomfortable, I'm number 1. And let me open the chat box. Take a look. Chat. 2, 2. Oh. Oh. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that, guys. So there are 6 ways imposter syndrome can show up. Lubna talked about, hey, I'm really confident. And yet I'm writing this book and I'm doubting myself. I have imposter syndrome. So there are 6 ways it can show up. So let's look at them. And Lubna, I'm so curious which one you'll identify with. So we're going to take them one by one. The first imposter is called the perfectionist. This person believes that they need to do things perfectly, and when they make a mistake, it's evidence of how good they're not. Hang on. They always are redoing something and rechecking it and rereading it and putting it through Grammarly 3 times. 99% is not good enough for this person. You ask yourself a question to find out if maybe this is you. If you make a mistake, do you have trouble letting it go? Are you over prepared for presentations? I could yes and yes for me. So we're going to take a poll later, but that's the perfectionist. Now we have the workaholic. The workaholic feels that they need to be superhero to prove their competency. They need to go over and above. They don't need to meet expectations. They need to exceed them. And they think that hard work will help people perceive them as really good because they doubt themselves. And so they overwork to help conceal or cover over the inadequacy. So ask yourself, do you feel pressured to work harder or longer than everyone else just to keep up? Do you seek out new responsibilities even when your plate is full? If you answered yes to either, you may very well be a workaholic. The third one, cute, a natural genius. So I have this one as well. Let's go. You believe that if you were truly intelligent, you wouldn't have to study. You wouldn't need to work as hard as you do. Like, I'd already get this. I'd already have my MCC. And the questions to ask yourself are, do you give up on things that don't come easily the first time? Are you ashamed to admit to people how long it took you to put together that slide deck, or how long it took you to get your PCC, ACC, whatever? And for clients, it would be the promotion or what have you. The next type is called the expert. And the expert needs to be the smartest person in the room. We all know someone like that. And even when they have their BCC, MCC, this and that, they think they need to learn more. Like, I'm engaged in 2 courses this year. I love learning. So, do you think you need to know everything about a job before you do it? Do you always feel that you need to be an expert? Can't make any mistakes? Or do you constantly look for new training opportunities, even though others say you have the credentials to succeed? So I heartily relate to this one as well. It was so interesting when I saw these. I said, oh my gosh. I was surprised, but it made perfect sense. And I really realized what imposter phenomenon was. The next type is the soloist. They believe that they have to do everything on their own, everything themselves, right? They don't need help. They don't ask for help. They would feel much better if you didn't give them help. And when they do ask for help, they hate it. They feel inadequate, helpless, uncomfortable. And they have trouble working in a team because, so if you have clients who have trouble working in a team, look out for this, because they're afraid if Joe makes a mistake and my name is on the project, then I'm going to get exposed. They're afraid of other people making mistakes. They can't handle it because they feel that they'll be responsible in some way. And so the soloist, you might ask yourself, do you not ask for help lest someone thinks you aren't an expert? Oh, I can't ask so-and-so to help me on this project because they'll know I don't know everything then. And do you believe it doesn't count as much if you had help? So those are the 5 types of imposter syndrome. And as I mentioned, many people relate to at least one, if not some. So anonymously, we would love to ask you, which do you relate to? And here's a reminder of what they are. It's hard to remember all that, right? Take a moment and read the slide while Jimmy gets our poll ready.
I'm just going to wait another second so everybody can see, and then I'll launch it because I know it'll jump up in front of that.
It will. Yeah.
So how bad is it if I'm all of them? Yeah.
And it's to different degrees.
Right.
It depends on the project. It depends on the circumstance, depends on if there's another person involved. It can really vary. But you can experience all of them, just not maybe all the time on everything, right? Like Lubna said, oh, I have a book to write and my imposter phenomenon is blooming. Mm-hmm. Okay, so
we got a lot of results here. Let's see, we've got a couple more. Oh, here we go. There we go. We're getting the last ones. There's one person left. There it is, 100%. All right.
Amy, what does it look like here?
It's pretty varied. The top one is perfectionist, and then natural genius is second with superhero, and then workaholic soloist. So lots of perfectionists and natural geniuses in the room right now. Of course, all overachievers.
Yeah. And it's funny because when we're little, this gets hardwired into us one way or another. As you saw, there were 3 different ways it can happen. It gets hardwired, and our subconscious doesn't know any better. Our subconscious believes it, and we carry it into adulthood. And then it shows up when a certain circumstance or situation presents itself. And that's how we respond internally. That's our first response, to get nervous or afraid. Can you take it down now, Jimmy?
Yes.
So what do we do with this? We're going to get to that. but I wanted you to understand what it is first. It's not as bad as you think. You're in very good company. Oh, share results. Okay.
Oh,
It's up. I don't
is
know
it
if
still up there?
yeah.
I don't want to share. I
Okay.
want to stop sharing.
Yeah.
Should be gone now, yes?
Not on my screen. On your screen, guys?
You could
I
go
think you have
ahead,
to close it.
Paulette, and click out on it. I had to do the same thing just to exit out.
Ken? Okay, let me move my bar. Oh, I clicked out on it.
All good.
Okay, let me take a time check. It's 5 minutes after 1, and we started at 12:30. All right, so we're doing well on time. So now we're to the good part. How do we work with this in our clients and in ourselves? And there are strategies that I'd like to share with you. The first strategy is pretty simple. Voice your fears with a safe peer group. That's what today's been about, even though we did it anonymously to keep it really safe the first time, and a few of us were willing to admit. It helps normalize it. I help people when I tell them, yeah, I'm a perfectionist. It comes from not wanting anyone to see any imperfection in me. I don't want them to think I'm not good enough. It's very helpful when, one competency talks about the coach being vulnerable and transparent. Well, they don't use the word transparent with our client. And I'm not saying we should bring ourselves into the conversation at all, but sometimes some of us do coaching and mentoring, or coaching and teaching leadership theory. And it's okay to normalize a feeling for your client. ICF will say, keep yourself out of it. I'm saying in real life, if you do that, it helps normalize it. Knowing Michelle Obama has it helped me. It's a relief to know how common it is. And you realize what good company you're keeping. It's not this shameful thing. Here's the best part. When you see the dynamics in another, like Einstein, then you recognize the lack of reality about it. This is a feeling, this isn't a fact. Michelle Obama thinks she's, in another quote about imposter phenomenon, she said, listen, I'm just that little girl from the south side of the Bronx who went to public school. That's what her brain is telling her. So, the only way, and this is a quote from Pauline Chance, the psychologist, the only way to stop feeling like an imposter is to stop thinking like an imposter. So as coaches, we know that what we think and feel affects our behavior. So if we're having these thoughts, there are things we can do, and there are things we can give the client to do, or we could ask them to help them reframe their automatic negative thoughts. And that's what they're called, ANTs, automatic negative thoughts. They're automatic because they're in your subconscious since the day you were born, or since you were small. They're there, they're hardwired. It's not your fault that they come up. So they're automatic. And we can break the automatic negative thought cycle. And in fact, it's a very simple way. It's very simple to do, but not easy. What you do is 3 steps. Become mindful of what is happening in the moment. So I'm writing this book, and all of a sudden now I'm feeling XYZ. I wonder if I'm going to be able to do it as well as I thought. Or I don't know what to write. I'm getting nervous. So you recognize it in the moment, as Lubna did. Thank you so much, Lubna, for mentioning that up front. Because I'm using it as an example. It really helps. That's number 1. 2, choose a more resourceful thought. Here's where you can help your client come up with that more resourceful thought. What do we mean by that? Well, I've always received good feedback on my communications throughout my entire life and career. So I'm going to give this my best shot. And I hope people appreciate it. That could be a thought that replaces, ooh, I don't know how this is going to turn out. And it has to be true. You can't BS yourself. So you have to find what's really, really true and tell yourself that, because it is true. And that's what we need to replace. I'm great at communicating. I'm good at writing. Everyone tends to appreciate, or most people tend to appreciate my communications. So, I will create this and let it be what it is. And I think it will have an audience. I think some people will appreciate it. Lubna, I'm curious, what would be your more resourceful thought? Can I ask you? Can I put you on the spot? You had written me an email saying you would be happy to talk it through.
Yes. So definitely the never good enough syndrome. The thought is overwhelmingly present. I'm working with an incredible journalist on the book. She's the one reviewing, giving me feedback. And I did not realize how that syndrome was evident in writing the book. It's not my usual self.
What do you tell yourself? What's the automatic negative thought in a sentence, if you could?
I have no idea what I'm doing.
Good.
So
I have no idea.
PhD, 10 years of NLP and 7 years of PhD just went discredited back to the garbage. Exactly. I have no clue what I'm doing. And the more I work on the topic of change, I realize I know nothing, right? So the more you know, the less you know. But it's really evident in the book, because suddenly the book is going to people, and Jimmy might read it, Misha might read it, people I know. If people I don't know read it, I don't care. Could care less. So that impostor is really going nuts. And so a more liberating thought would definitely be, I am doing my best. I have over 600 references in the book. Enough is enough. So I'm doing my best.
I like that.
And I'm doing my best. And if it's not good enough, that's fine. Like, I need to liberate and get it out of my way. I'm done.
So, Lubna, might we continue a little bit since we do have time?
Please.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you these questions. Now, again, we're in a public area, so let's just, normally we would mention something about confidentiality up front, but we didn't because we didn't know we would do this.
Okay, don't worry.
Because you emailed me yesterday. So what I'd like to say to the group is anything that's mentioned here stays here. And if you don't agree with it, please let us know in the chat, and Jimmy will, mute you or something. I don't know what you can do, Jimmy. All right. If you're not comfortable with it, you can leave the line or tell us you're not comfortable.
Oh, no. I'm completely open to the learning.
Yeah, okay, good. So I asked you what the anxious or fearful thought is. I don't know what I'm doing.
I have no idea.
What evidence do you have for this thought, Lubna?
The amazing writers and authors and philosophers about change that I'm, strong admirer of their books. So that's my evidence. Like, I see them and they're so good at what they do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So that's your evidence for you don't know what you're doing?
Oh, no, you're right.
So what is thank you. What is the evidence for, I don't know what I'm doing? I want to hear evidence. Evidence, proof. Yeah.
Yeah.
Take your time.
I do know the topic really well. I've been researching it for a very long time. That I do know.
So that's question 3. So you have evidence against the thought. You have 200 references. You've been studying it and reading it for a very long time. But I still haven't heard any evidence for, I don't know what I'm doing.
Maybe there's a little voice that says you should be doing 10 more years before you write a book.
Mm-hmm. But that's a voice. That's not evidence, right? That's
not evidence.
That's the imposter. That's the imposter voice. That's the ant, right?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And probably change is very complex, and we may offer options. We truly, no one, I don't believe anyone knows how to fix the issue problem. So, um, so maybe it's my approach as well. Is I'm not trying to fix a problem. I'm just sharing options of how we could manage the change in organizations at this time. I don't think there's anyone able to really capable, because it takes a lot more micro learning of the organization to get to the results. That could be the evidence.
Yeah, so that's not evidence that you don't know what you're doing, is it? Did I misunderstand?
No,
So-
you're right. It's not. It's not.
I'm going to be Judge Judy right now. I didn't hear any evidence of you don't know what you're doing. If you come up with it, please tell me. I'm happy to be wrong if I'm wrong. Okay, so but you haven't given me any yet. But you have, on question number 3, given me quite a bit of evidence for against the thought.
True.
So what would you tell your dear friend who is writing a book on change if they said to you, with having a PhD, coaching credential, et cetera, I don't know what I'm doing? What would you say to them?
I would say trust the process,
Mhm.
and trust the process and give yourself a chance to write the book you have wanted to write for the last 10 years.
Encouraging and supportive. Okay. What does that thought do for you? If your friend were to say it back, if I were to say, so Lubna, trust the process, give it a chance. What does that thought do for you?
It brings me peace
Mm.
and awareness that maybe the imposter has been playing a bigger part than my normal sense of optimism and wisdom.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, kind of took center stage. Yeah. But you're noticing it now. Right. So if you gave up, I don't know what I'm doing, and replaced it with, I'm going to trust this process. I'm going to give this a chance. I have good background and experience to be doing this. How would things be different for you if you were able to replace it with the new thought?
I think I would enjoy the process more.
Yeah, I see that.
I would enjoy it a lot more, which is something is important to me, doing work that I enjoy. It would also help me let go of that perfectionism that there should be no errors in the book. So what? Let there be errors. Which already feels like a heavy weight is off the chest. Let it be. Let there be errors, and the next edition would be better.
That's great. I was going to give you the next question. What if your fear is true? You don't know what the hell you're doing. What would be the outcome? You just told me there'd be some errors in the book. And what would you do? I'd clear it up in the second edition.
And what's interesting, Paulette, is usually that's me. It's like, oh, I'm not prepared for this class. Oh, who cares? It's going to be fine, right? So that's me. That's my usual automatic thinking. Hey, we'll just play. We'll test something new. But with the book, it has been like this syndrome. Again, imposter came in full life. So I really feel wholeheartedly for those who live with it every day, not on occasions, that it's becoming, oh, I need to be really good at this before I make it public.
Mhm. But like you said, these are your words. The worst that happens is there's some mistakes. There's mistakes, and you correct them in the second edition.
Yes.
And I heard you also say, give it a chance, trust the process.
Absolutely.
And that would bring you peace.
Yes, it will.
So what is the thing? You said a few things, trust the process, give it a chance. What is the sentence? Because I want you to leave with something that you can tell yourself each time the imposter rings the doorbell. What's your one sentence that you want to say to yourself? Something you can remember.
Everyone that will read my book will recommend my book.
Okay, that's really powerful.
I think that would leave me feeling, okay, it's a good book.
Okay, okay.
I tend to recommend books all the time. So I think that came to my mind from that aspect. Like, how do I value books? I value when I recommend them. Like, if I like it, I always recommend it.
Right.
So everyone that I shouldn't say everyone, people that would read my book will recommend my book.
Okay, cool. And how does that thought make you feel?
Really good.
Yeah.
Really good about get it done and get it over with.
Yeah. So Lubna, what can you do going forward? So you have your mantra, your sentence. I'd like to make a request. How can you either you bring it forward all day long, meaning note on the computer, reading it 10 times on your Siri, on your, you could have Siri remind you of it 10 times a day, I guess. There's all sorts of things one can do because we're trying to embed the new thinking. The other one's automatic. The only way to get this one automatic is repetition over time. What can you do, or what might you like to do to help you get this one now embedded as an automatic thought?
Oh, I'm gonna have a post-it right here in front of my computer. I'm gonna have one in the mirror, the refrigerator, and I definitely love the idea of the reminder on like a daily reminder in the morning when I wake up that it says, Alexa says, good morning, everyone that will read your book is going to recommend your book. Not everyone, people.
People who read my book
can be
will
excluded.
recommend it. Cool. Thank you for letting me work with you on this. I know it's really important to you, as you mentioned yesterday. So how are you feeling about the process? Is there anything you can share with Jimmy? How many minutes do we have? Let me just check with Jimmy first.
We have about 30 minutes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we got plenty of time.
Okay. So Lucia, can you tell the group maybe what was useful, if anything, about this process of reframing automatic negative thoughts to thoughts that are absolutely true that you can believe that would put you more in a place of peace? What helped here? What?
I think what really helped me was trying to identify the facts that I'm not good at this. So yeah, I mean, it's my first book, right? So that could be a fact, like I'm a newbie at this. But in general, my facts in my head were, I don't know enough. I haven't done it enough, which are all lies. I've worked with organizations on this specific issue for a very long time, and I've lived it myself in many experiences and did the study after study after study after study and keep doing studies to go back to the source of failure and change. So yes, I have enough to say that I don't have enough, right? That, so saying enough is enough. And the evidence of why not, like letting go of that wanting to be perfect, because it's not going to be. Today, I'm able to publicly say to a wonderful group of people that are coaches just like me that, yeah, it's not going to be perfect and it's okay. And that took out this heavy load from me.
See, that one hit me right here. It's not going to be perfect and it's okay. That would be probably my mantra. That one I could believe personally. It's not going to be perfect, but that's all right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And if anyone knows that they have the solution for the idea, it's a lie, because we don't know what we don't know until we are in it. So
That's
I
right.
think just offering people options, hopefully one organization takes it and uses it, I'll be happy.
I wish you the best with it. I'll buy
Thank
the
you.
book out. So let us know. Let us know when it comes out. It'd be so great. Everyone has to buy it the same week so you can get on the Amazon list. Right? Is there something about doing it all at the same time or something the first week?
Yeah, you get the Amazon list, but it's only for a few hours. The next day it's gone. So I'm starting to wonder if it's, but yeah, for a moment in time in Amazon, you become number one if everyone buys it at the same time.
Yeah.
You just grab the screenshot then and take it.
Screenshot.
Right. Jimmy knows
Or
all.
we can make one, Jimmy, on the.
For sure. I
Because it's
think for
only one
that
moment.
Amazon launch, you've got to do a fair amount of advertising a couple of weeks before, just getting all your friends on board and saying, hey, it's coming out, it's this week, and do a big, give it away for 99 cents and get everybody on board with it right away so you jump up to the top.
Thank you for letting me work with you, Lubna. I really appreciate it. I didn't think we'd have time for it, but we certainly did. And Jimmy, it looks like we do have another 30 minutes. So there are options. We could open it up to questions and sharing, because again, a really important part of imposter syndrome is being able to voice your fears in a safe peer group. Having it be normalized really does help. Or perhaps there are some questions. Jimmy, what would you like us to do?
Well, I think we can definitely open it up to some questions to see, if there was anything. First of all, thank you so much, Paulette and Lubna. Lubna, for being so vulnerable and really putting yourself out there. That was amazing. That is not an easy thing to do. I don't do that well either. And Paulette, great coaching. Love it. Let me see if there was anything in the chat. I know there was something way back a little ways that it was a good question. Let me see if I can find it. So some people are wondering, why has this word, because you had mentioned this, was originally found out or discovered, if you will, back in 1978, but we really didn't hear anything about it. And then suddenly it changed to syndrome instead of phenomenon. I'm going to say something kind of sexist here. My guess is that a male got a hold of it and decided to call it a syndrome because the studies were all done on women. And so he wanted to mansplain this thing in some way. So that's my guess on how the name changed. But the question was around, they noticed that like somewhere around, 2015, maybe like when Silicon Valley started, becoming about, is when this term started coming about a little bit more. I'm getting a lot of noise in the background. Is that someone's, I don't know where it's coming from exactly. Maybe it's just my computer. But is there anything to this Silicon Valley thing? Like, how did we get to a space where this phenomenon has become so prevalent now?
Okay. I don't have the precise factual answer for you, but I have how I've explained it to myself. I've noticed that in the past 30 years, especially the past 10 of the 30 years, that the entire globe is becoming more conscious, more woke, however you would like to describe it, more mindful, right? That's another word too that's being used a lot lately. And I think with mindfulness and the advent of coaching, people are understanding now that their thoughts, their thinking, affects how they feel and affects their results. So it's coming up. So certain people would say, okay, what the heck is this? And when they went to research it, they said, oh, there's a name, imposter syndrome. So I think the coaching, I think, is responsible for some of it, because we're working with people and say, what do you think? Because we know the connection between the three. And I think cognitive behavioral therapists work with their clients in this way. This is certainly from a cognitive behavioral theory book. And I think people are reading people like Eckhart Tolle, and we've been exposed to Oprah and whomever it is. I think that we're all expanding our awareness around how important mindfulness is. And when you're mindful, you can differentiate between an automatic negative thought that came from out there that's not true, with, if I were mindful and present in this moment, what would I say to myself? Hey, it may have mistakes, but I'm okay with that. I could fix them in the second edition. That's the mindful thought. So that's my explanation. Maybe somebody has another theory.
Let's see, we have a question from Meredith
And Patricia. Hi, Patricia.
and Patricia. Maybe Patricia was first. Yeah, Patricia.
I just put it in the chat. I wanted to comment that it is called a syndrome now because it has a specific set of symptoms and it's identifiable.
In the DSM.
Huh.
So that's the mental health illness approach. They're calling it syndrome. Yeah. And a lot of people don't like that because they don't want it associated with that. It does, I don't think it's, yeah, I don't see it as mental illness.
I think that yeah, I don't see it as mental illness either. It's a mindset for sure. It's a thought pattern, behavior. I find it very interesting that it's called, here's the interesting thing, the psychologist who created the name in the first place, Impostor Phenomenon, there's a reason it's phenomenon and not syndrome. The phenomenon is this type of mindset occurs in people who are incredibly successful. You don't find this in run-of-the-mill or below average people. You only find imposter syndrome with incredibly successful people. That's the phenomenon. They are successful, and yet they're like, I don't quite belong here. Yes, it's a craving for being better all the time, but it's the phenomenon. It's not a syndrome. It's a phenomenon because it's so, you're like, how does this happen? You're incredibly successful. You have no evidence that you are not. And that's the phenomenon. They named it correctly in the first place. It's unfortunate the name changed in some way because it's no longer accurate. But that seems to be the interesting part of it beyond what we've already discussed. Meredith, did you have a question, or what is your question?
I did have a question. I put it in the chat, but Paulette, when Lubna was talking or speaking, she said the word should a few times. Is should an indicator that the imposter could be coming, or the imposter's there?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, because I'm working, one of my intentions right now, one of the coaches I'm working with is to change my language when I am ready to say should. So, and that's been a pretty good effort on my part to do that. So when I heard, so every time I hear should, I perk up, just that much more. And
Yeah.
I heard Lubna say it a few times. So that's what prompted the question.
Right. So when you hear should, it's entirely possible there's an imposter syndrome there. But Lubna self-reported that she had it. So we didn't have to say, oh, Lubna, I hear you saying should. We know,
Right.
We know how the imposter speaks. You could try this tool or a modification of this tool with shoulds, because you could say, well, what is the anxious or fearful thought if you don't do it?
Mm-hmm.
What evidence do you have that will happen if you don't do that? Should.
Right.
What evidence do you have against the thought? Would you tell a close friend, right? You can literally take them through that with a should.
Absolutely. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
One of the other questions that had come up, I think it was Eric who had said, and it kind of goes along with what Meredith was just saying, was how do, if the term imposter doesn't come up in a session, how would a coach go in there if they started getting the sense that maybe this person was feeling or thinking as an imposter? How would you begin that conversation, or would you at all?
Yeah, so I would. And there's two ways of doing it, depending on the relationship with the client and how much safety and trust is there. So one way you could do it is you could say, I hear that you don't think you know what you're doing. And you could even do it in this way. I think you do, actually, because we're allowed to share an observation. My observation is you do know what to do, Lubna, or you wouldn't have gotten involved in the first place. What do you make of that? That's one way you could handle it. The other way you could handle it is you could identify and say, what I'm hearing is that your imposter is showing up. What do you make of that? They may even say, I don't know. So I've had people say, what do you mean by imposter? And then I give them the definition. Or they say, yeah, it's like I'm feeling, they say it's true. Now, I've had times where I had to stop the coaching and teach them what it is and where it comes from. Because until we know those two things, we're still not going to give ourselves credit. We have to understand it's not our fault. We have to understand there was a set of circumstances that created it. And we have to understand, like you said, Jimmy, this happens to high achieving people. And people need to understand that. They need to know they're in good company. So, yeah, I might share an observation. And the observation might be imposter, and then I get to describe and we work through it. But I would use this tool for whatever that imposter thought was. Was that the question?
Does that answer it, Eric?
Okay. Any follow-up question, Eric?
No, that's great. It's just, I love it because, but I struggle with this, the idea that we're not supposed to, diagnose anything. And so that was sort of the base of the question, but I love the way you handled it. And thank you for that. And I really appreciate the distinction of pausing the coaching to explain the basis of it, so that then the client can then form their own reaction to it before continuing the coaching. So thank you very much that's very well handled. Thank you.
Eric, you'll find there's a great deal of relief when you explain what it is and where it comes from. Now, of course, in an ICF recorded session, you wouldn't stop the action and explain this theory. This is real world coaching when you're outside of, let's say, an ICF recording. I just want to make that clear, because that would be considered teaching. Here's what it is. Here's how it works. Then when you get to the tool, of course, that would be coaching again.
Yep.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I'm curious about the idea of, like, if someone didn't know, had we mentioned as a coach the word imposter syndrome or imposter phenomenon, and the client was not familiar with the term, could that create a problem in itself just because now they have a term that they can use as a crutch, a reason, an excuse? And I say this because I've noticed this in the mental health world, especially with younger people, with teenagers and young adults. As soon as they learn a word, they're like, oh, well, that's why I'm depressed. And then they latch on to that, and it becomes a deeper issue because they've now glommed onto this term that they've learned, and it somehow normalizes or rationalizes what's going on. And I wonder, is there a possibility that could happen with a client? And might I not want to inject this new term that gives them something?
My experience has been, look, you have to be brave to bring it up.
Mm.
You have to make sure there's trust. They feel safe. And you don't have to use the word imposter to start, by the way.
Right.
I'm hearing that you feel a bit like a fraud. Is that right? Or it sounds like you're feeling a little insecure about it, right? And then you could say, actually, there's some literature around why this feeling is popping up for you.
Mm.
I'd like to share it with you if you're open to it. In 1970, Pauline Chance coined it,
Mm-hmm.
but still they have that name, and you explain what it is. They can call it whatever they like. But I hear what you're saying. Will someone use it as an excuse? I think human beings can use any term as an excuse for their behavior. But I think as a coach, if you hear it without them even knowing what it is, and you will hear it now because now you have things to look for, you can bring it up using different words and put them through an exercise like this, so that hopefully the point of coaching is that you're having them think beyond the way they currently think. This tool gets them to, first of all, figure out they don't have any evidence. And two, what they tell a friend is the truth. So why aren't I telling myself that? And then they come up with a new thing that you're asking them to practice. So it's not my tool. This is cognitive behavioral theory. This is a very effective tool, and I've seen it work if someone wants to work it. But yeah, there are people out there, Jimmy, that will just say, well, it's just my imposter syndrome. Can't do anything about it.
Exactly. Thank you. I like the way you answered that. And yeah, using different terms or finding different ways.
Yeah, words you feel comfortable with and the client might feel comfortable with.
Right. Gotcha. Allison.
Yeah, I actually wanted to kind of flip around what you were saying, Jimmy, and hear your thoughts on this, Paulette. There were a couple of really interesting articles published in HBR last year by a couple of women who kind of came at imposter syndrome from a different perspective, suggesting that it was something that was being overused with women and with individuals who might be in, you know, sort of minority, underrepresented types of roles in companies, where there actually are external pressures that are causing people to feel like they're not at the table, and that ends up being a label that gets used quite easily, but by people who are looking to maybe consciously or unconsciously keep them in those less important roles.
Well, I will say this. I've taken a few classes on imposter syndrome, and if you'd like to speak to someone who's from an underrepresented group, I learned the most from Lisa Orbe Austin. I have her quoted and referenced in here, and I read her book. And she said the experience of a minority, this is all heightened because it's systemic. They come into it thinking, I come into it as a female, for example, a female Italian American, thinking I'm not good enough. I'm not going to be good enough for these white waspy males at Marsh & McLennan where I worked, who had on suits with their initials. So imposter syndrome, I walked in before anyone said a word to me. So yes, it can be a systemic thing, but I'm not sure exactly where you're going with the question, but I think it's a valid thing to recognize and work through regardless of what you call it. And if people start using it as an excuse or in ways other than to change their thinking, yeah, then we might have a problem.
Yeah, no, I found it's basically, like you, very helpful to work with individuals to work through it, but it's also helpful sometimes to provide some of the external context to think about, there may actually be things happening where you are being given subtle signals that you don't belong, and that may not be coming from you.
Yeah. That happens. It absolutely happens. And it happens more with underrepresented groups. Absolutely. You come into it knowing you already feel like the imposter. Yeah. Yeah. And things are said to you like, would you mind redoing that? I'm not sure it's good enough yet. Or anything that's said to you, you then take as the evidence. Remember when I asked Lubna for evidence, she couldn't find any? There are people who unfortunately can find evidence because their boss or someone is giving them feedback that isn't nurturing their soul, isn't helping them evolve. They're giving them negative feedback and they're saying, well, that's not good enough. Instead of, this part here, I think could be much stronger. I think you're capable of making this much stronger. And I have an idea or two, if you'd like, to help you do that. There are ways that we can talk to people, more of a coaching approach, where they can see areas for development, as opposed to do it over, or it's wrong. And a lot of people I coach don't know how to speak to their staff when the staff does something that's not, accurate. And they are inflicting like this imposter syndrome feeling on people. Absolutely. That's how it comes from in the first place, our parents, right? The parents, the school system. You're not good enough.
Shakti, I see your hand. I did want to do a little bit of a follow-up with Paulette on Allison's question, because Paulette, you made an interesting comment where we're talking about there's no evidence and your boss is telling you this isn't good enough. So
but there may
how do we come to that? It may not be proof, but someone's perception is that it's not good enough. And so how do we square that up with the imposter versus what my boss is telling me on a regular basis?
Good question. It's a matter of language. I can say, Jimmy, the way you handled this today sucked. Or I could say, Jimmy, I have an idea I'd like to share with you. Could I run it by you? It might be useful, maybe not. You say yes. So, I was thinking maybe we could have sign language while we're doing this. Right?
Right.
And then You may not like that I suggested that, but I asked permission. I told you, feel free to discard that if it's not useful to you. But saying you didn't do something good and saying to someone there's an area for development is different. And that's why it's so important that leaders learn coaching skills, because they're inadvertently creating imposters.
Agree. Yeah. So if the leader were getting the coaching, we could certainly help them with better language and better behaviors. On the receiving, if you're coaching the other person who's getting this behavior thrown at them or these reactions as feedback, and they're saying, you're coaching the one who is feeling the imposter. How do we square that up with them to say, look, that's just something your boss says. That doesn't make it true. But in reality, that's the job they have. They have to, that's where they live.
Yeah. Well, you have to help them tease that apart. And just because someone says you're a purple pig doesn't mean you're a purple pig. What he was saying is, it might be a good idea to have sign language, but he didn't know how to say that to you in a productive, resourceful way. He didn't say, hey, have you ever considered sign language?
Right.
He said that wasn't good enough. And that's the part you're hearing.
Yeah.
So this whole exercise would work. So what evidence do you have for not being good enough? Just that he thinks you should have done it differently. Anytime anyone gives you feedback on a presentation, on an exam, that's why I don't like grades at school. I hate them, but I have to give them at NYU. I don't think grades are appropriate when you're learning something. I think everyone's doing the best they can. They'll learn as much as they want when they want it. That's just my opinion. I know not everyone agrees with me. Certainly NYU doesn't. I think grading people and labeling them and saying something's wrong is not that helpful. It's better to say, and it's equally as truthful. There's another way to think of this. Or what have you. It can be reframed into an area for development. Would you be interested in hearing some feedback where you could get even sharper? I have to do this all the time when I listen to coach recordings.
Yeah.
Right? Some of them are bad. Right?
Thank you.
I take each one and I have to convert it to an area for development. Your coach might consider setting the session agreement more powerfully by first asking for an outcome, then asking for a measure, and then exploring why it's important, instead of saying, you didn't set the session agreement.
Right.
Because then the person thinks, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Now look, imposters, they still may feel insecure, but you're doing everything in your power to use nonviolent language, right? Because words can harm people. Wrong, no. Instead, opportunity. An opportunity for growth.
Yeah, that's helpful.
Reframing. It's all reframing.
Right.
And maybe they aren't a great writer and the boss says, oh, this is not good enough. But it really should be presented as, thank you so much for making this attempt. I can see how much work and time you put into this, and I appreciate it. And at the same time, I'd like to give you some feedback. Are you open to it? Yeah, I am. Okay, there's a couple things I'd like you to look into, because I think it will really help you improve. And you're not saying whether you want to or not, because this is work now. You might look at the style guide. You might learn how to make a proper reference, or whatever it is. It can be framed with nonviolent language.
Thank you. Shakti, I see you put your hand down. We've still got a few minutes left. Did you want to ask the question? Sorry, I kind of stole your time there.
No, I think, thank you, Jimmy. I appreciate that. No, I actually think that just with this specific question brought up and amplified by Allison and then by you, I guess what I took from this is that imposter syndrome is, number one, something you have to figure out if it in fact is real imposter syndrome, and that's part of the whole way that you coach the initial potential sign of it. Is it real, or is it really just like you said in this example, a third party bringing in inappropriately feedback that kind of really just needs to be handled at that level. But then also I was wondering, it kind of goes to an earlier question that I had, which I'm not sure I'm thinking of correctly, imposter syndrome is not an all or nothing phenomenon in a person, right? It's situational, very often something new,
Right.
something that you're less, maybe, for me, certainly, I feel like it comes up when there's something that I'm not perfect at, right? So the perfectionist aspect of it, because I'm not studied enough, or I haven't, my education isn't advanced enough, or whatever it might be. So that's an example of imposter syndrome, but it's specific to a situation. Is that kind of how, am I thinking of this right?
That is exactly right. Thank you for making that distinction. It happens sometimes when there's a new job, a new role, a promotion, the firm is taken over by another group, and those situations can bring out the imposter. Uh-oh, now I have to prove to myself, to these people, what will they think? Oh, they gave me this promotion. I want them to know they didn't make a mistake, right? Yeah, absolutely, Shakti.
Thank you, Shakti. So we are getting really, really close to the end of time here. Paulette, thank you so very much. This was incredible. This was so enlightening. And I think we all feel, some of us feel less burdened, and some of us feel really enlightened right now.